Now it is time to bring out our second guest, who has arranged for more than $25 million in loans and leases for cannabis businesses that oftentimes don't have access to traditional banking. So it's my pleasure to welcome Scott Jordan to the Cannabist Show.
All right.
Hey, man.
Hey, thank you.
Happy
Good
holidays.
to see you. Happy holidays to you, too.
Oh, man, more
I brought you a little something here. Yes, I thought you have such a nice cannabis cup there, but look how nicely it matches Jake's gift. Look at that.
Dynamic Alternatives Finance.
Yes, we didn't even know that. So,
well, I'm glad we're sending you guys home with some cannabis swag and mugs and all that ish. So.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah,
I've admired your show, and I've seen you, several times around town. It's great.
I know.
Great.
Yeah, I
and
appreciate it.
Happy holidays to everybody else out there.
Yeah. Heck
and
yes.
Happy New Year. 2017 is going to be a great year.
We're going to be talking about this New Year, Scott.
Great.
But first, where are you at on the spectrum of weed? Indica, sativa.
I love IPA. That's really my favorite.
That's your answer, huh, Scott? Okay. So you're not a consumer.
I love IPA, and one of my favorite places is just around the corner from where I live in Lone Tree. They make a great IPA.
Which place?
Lone Tree Brewing Company.
Oh, cool. Excellent.
Yes, it's wonderful.
Not far from there. Are you familiar with Dry Dock in Aurora?
Yes.
I like that hef.
Okay.
And I don't even like beer, but somehow that Dry Dock Hefeweizen, like, oh yeah, I can get behind that.
Yeah, good. Good.
Well, thank you for sharing your affinity for IPA. That's important too, especially, the family Cannabacea. It's all the same.
Yes.
It's all cousins, weed, hemp, hops. So
and IPAs have a lot of hops.
They do.
So Scott, as I just mentioned, many cannabis businesses still don't have access to banking or those banking services that so often are taken for granted. That includes loans. But you work with Dynamic Alternative Finance, and you guys have found a way around this conundrum. So please tell me how this works.
Sure. Well, thank you very much for asking me that. What we do is we utilize private investors that want to invest in the business, but don't necessarily have feet on the street. And so I am there de facto feet on the street, and what we do is we find someone that's looking for money, and we connect them up with someone that has money after doing some underwriting and some analysis of that particular deal. And we've been very successful in growing. In about a year and a half or so, we formed the company in the summer of 2015. We've grown this tremendously, and more investors are coming on board as well that want to help the industry grow as well as take advantage of above average returns.
Oh, sure. So if I'm an investor and I don't know necessarily who is legit enough to invest in directly, I can come to you and say, hey, you're basically managing their assets and leveraging them with an industry that is in need of capital.
More introduction rather than managing their assets, because I don't claim to know who's going to be the next person that's going to go out of business or get bought. But what I try to do is bring to them an opportunity that they wouldn't normally see because of, again, I'm out there, I speak at conferences, I write articles, I do other things that cause a lot of business to come my way.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So give us an example how this works.
Sure.
Maybe a real company that you've worked
Sure.
with. What did they need the capital for, and how were you guys able to make it happen?
Sure. Many of my customers I'm under NDA with, but one that I can tell you about is a company called Dalton Farms. Dalton Farms is a company up in Boulder. They grow wholesale and sell wholesale, and they were at a very interesting point in their life cycle in that they were about a year into in the business and had not quite gotten traction as much as they would like to have financially, and so they did not want to give up equity. So we looked at putting together a deal that actually came from the credit union, where we are one of their funding partners locally here. And what we were able to do was we were able to bring in an investor that was going to go ahead and fund what they needed and was taking too long to actually get the deal closed. They had some priorities that they needed the money for. We ended up switching horses in midstream, took them to another private lender that ended up getting the deal done in less than a week. So the beauty of our business model, I think that's really nice for the borrower, is because we have multiple lending choices, we can affect different solutions than just a lender that has one single choice and only that choice can do. So we were able to meet his deadline as well as get him the money, and he was very, very happy and is now on his way, increasing the square footage and the lights in the greenhouse, and doing very well.
Interesting. And with Dalton Farms, did they not have access to traditional loans and banking services like we talked about?
They did not. I mean, right now, there's only one credit union aside from the one here in town that I know of that even entertains loaning money, because their boards are very conservative and they don't want to take a chance on losing money. And even if it wasn't federally illegal, very few banks are going to get into the business, I believe, because of the unknown. We have such a short history, and no one really knows how these companies are going to perform. And certainly in 2017, we've got the wild card and the new administration change that's going to certainly be an altered landscape. And in fact, I'd like to put in a pitch to perhaps come back on the show next year and talk about what the landscape is like next year compared to this year, because we've had a very good run. I mean, it's been a very nice, I did my first marijuana loan in 2009, and it's been very nice having the Obama administration give us the room to be able to plant the seeds and grow this up into a real industry.
Yeah, sure.
And now with the new administration coming up, we're not sure what that's going to entail for us coming up in 2017.
Well, plus what's going to happen with banking is there going to be movement made. And right now it's worth saying, there are plenty of banks working with people in the industry. They're just not doing so publicly. They're doing it in very small, almost experimental modes. And they're not spreading the word that, hey, weed industry, come to us for your banking services, and then loans is something entirely different than in addition to getting just a checking account. So
it absolutely is, and I have to give a big shout out to Sunday Seafried over at Partners Credit Union for really breaking down the door here in Colorado and providing access, as well as she's written a book about how she's done it. So the banks in other states and the credit unions in other states that want to take advantage of it now at least have a roadmap and a playbook on what they can do if they want to attract this business.
So just to try and nail this down even one level further, dynamic alternative finance, what are the similarities there and the differences between it and like a venture capitalist or an organization like the ArcView Group, which invests in marijuana companies?
Sure. The difference is that venture capitalists are generally in on the very early stages of a company, pre-revenue, where it's an idea and a concept and they haven't gotten revenue traction.
Sure.
ArcView is a lot of that as well. A lot of early stage companies that have an idea but little revenue. But Troy and Jeff, and again, big shout out to Troy and Jeff for what they've put together.
What's up, Troy and Jeff?
Yes, Troy and Jeff, right on. And what they've put together. And they've done a marvelous job in terms of helping early stage companies. And now they're helping later stage companies as well get capital that they need in order to expand. One of the differences is that in ArcView, you go and pitch in front of many, many investors at once and the whole rest of the world. So the whole rest of the world knows your secrets.
Sure.
We are more like a private money, private source. You sit down with me one-on-one. You're not revealing all of your intellectual property to the rest of the world.
And as you mentioned, this is in part about a higher than average interest rate that these investors are getting. So what are the interest rates we're talking about here? What does that look like?
Sure, they vary. We basically have three different food groups. We have real estate, we have equipment, and we have working capital. Real estate is the lowest, and I've got rates as low as 8% on a 15-year fixed rate loan. If for equipment, we're now in the low teens, 13, 14, somewhere in there. And for working capital, pretty similar. 15 is kind of about the average these days that we're seeing.
Oh, okay.
So rates have come down quite a bit with the amount of competition, just like any other market. More competitors, especially for a commodity like money, and the rates are going to be lower. And I hope that trend continues here in 2017 once we get some clear direction from the administration.
Well, I appreciate hearing that. We've had a couple folks on the couch before with their solutions to this conundrum of cannabis businesses wanting to bank. And I think all of them are so very interesting, and oftentimes coming from really intelligent people, saying, how can we help this industry still get access to the capital it needs without, while keeping them within federal regulations and guidelines. And so this is educational. I want to bring Jake back into the conversation, open this up a little bit. This is kind of my year-end wrap. With these questions on the last 3 shows of the year, but we are approaching New Year's Eve, as we just talked about, and I want each of you guys to tell me that if you had a New Year's resolution for the legal cannabis industry in America or beyond, what is the one facet of legal marijuana that you'd like to see worked out in 2017? Jake, why don't we start with you?
I think what I would love to see is lower potency, higher flavored marijuana. Scott will appreciate this. I would rather see more craft beer, less Everclear, where everyone keeps racing to make pot more and more potent. And I think that that's great, and there's a use for super potent pot. But I'd love to see some stuff that was low THC, maybe even ratio CBD to THC, and that people can smoke, a big joint of while you're sitting around a fire, and you don't have to worry about freaking out or like getting all quiet or anything like that. Because that's the one thing that I hear from people is that they want to smoke the weed that they used to smoke back in the day, and, and it's not out there. It's
Isn't
not
that
available.
a trip? I hear from that from people all the time. It's like, how do I get that 4%, 5% THC stuff I used to buy from the brick?
Yes.
And it's like, oh, I don't know that you can.
I couldn't find swag right now if I tried, and that was like what got me through high school and college.
Sure.
So it's so weird that no one's trying to fill that like little niche, especially considering the story that you were talking about earlier. There's so many more boomers that are getting interested in pot, people that are retired that are like, yeah, I'll smoke a little, why not? That'll be fun. But there aren't options for them other than, edibles or vape pens that tend to be lower. But it's like, hey, we should be able to get a big old joint at the dispensary and fire that up, because the problem with high potency stuff is it makes you paranoid or makes you quiet. And then it's no longer a social drug, right? I'm withdrawing, I don't want to be with these people, or, I'm nervous about whatever. Or the other thing is, if it's super potent and you can only have one hit or something, then it's not a social experience of passing it around and having that community. So. And
correct me if I'm wrong, because you are the expert, you are our critic. And I don't smoke weed, but I do vaporize, I do eat it. But when you're smoking weed, you have a nice joint, you have your fill, you put it out, you relight it, you have your fill, you put it out, and then like later on that night, maybe you light it a third time and share it. That I can't imagine that process makes that weed taste good. If you're like extinguishing it and then reigniting it and then, is that good for the taste of a joint, for the integrity of the cannabis?
So what I always tell people is that if you take a hit and you want to put it out, a lot of people will just let it rest there and it'll go out on its own a lot of times. But if you snuff it out and then blow through, so all that stale smoke isn't trapped in there with the rest of the bud, it'll help out the flavor. So that's the problem, is that stale smoke essentially is just going to sit there and absorb in. It's not going to make a huge difference. By the time you're a third of a way through a joint, you're already lost a lot of the initial flavor that you're getting out of it. It's kind of like the end of a sandwich where it's like, oh, all the stuff kind of dripped down into the bread, and it's like, oh, this isn't that fun. No one wants the end of a sandwich. You want the first bite or the second bite.
I don't know. That's my favorite bite, the end of the sandwich.
The end of the sandwich bite?
Yeah, totally. All the lettuce juice, that important lettuce juice.
Lettuce juice? What's wrong with you? Who hurt you?
Who made you sandwiches growing up? No, I like this idea of a refocus on flavor instead of potency. I think that's a really dynamic call and a good tip for those extinguishing joints for later use. Scott, where are you at on this question? One facet of legal marijuana you hope to see improved, worked out next year?
Yeah, I would love to see that the business owner has access to banking and banking services.
I saw that one coming.
It just seems to be so unfair and so hypocritical that the government will take tax revenues, whether it's in cash or whatever form, but they won't allow the legal marijuana business owner that's abiding by all the laws be able to deposit money into a bank as well as pay, with electronically like every other business does. Secondarily, I'm going to slip this one in. I'm hoping 280E is going to be resolved and
another important
and changed
issue.
Because it just is unfair and was never designed. That law was never designed for the legal marijuana business owners, and it's unfair that they're saddled with this 30% or so higher amount of taxes, and in some cases they're not able to actually make money when they have to factor in the expenses that they are unable to deduct. So,
both big goals. I'm sure many people agree with you and hope that there is some change on those fronts next year. But tell me this, Scott, because this seems to go against your own interests. If they legalize, if banking's suddenly okay, then
you're absolutely right.
Clients,
it does, but it's more important for the industry to grow than for just my company and myself to profit. And I hope that the banking laws will be relaxed, and I hope that the marijuana business owners will get treated fairly, because right now they're treated like third-class citizens. And I don't think that that's right, no matter how it affects me and my pocketbook.
Well, for any listeners, viewers watching right now, and if you're not familiar with 280E, which is an IRS tax code, Google it right now, and you will know what we're talking about.
Google it with Cannabist show in the search and watch the clip where John Lord explains it to you.
There you go. Yeah, there you go.
Has anyone asked you what your resolution is?
Oh, wow. As a journalist, traditional journalist, we're not really making our opinions known all that often. So that's why you guys are here. You guys have all these opinions, and they're valuable and they're valid, and I'm so thankful for you guys sharing them. Me, I don't really have an opinion on this that I'm sharing right now, but I hope that, I will say this. I hope the Cannabist continues to thrive in 2017, because we just got November numbers, and this has not been reported yet, although we will very soon, and we just had a monster November. We got ComScore numbers for the month of November. Thank you to our readers and our viewers and our listeners. You really are telling your most trusted people in your life about what we're doing here, and we're extremely proud of it, including 1.2 million unique users in November. We beat High Times, we beat marijuana.com. Very, very proud, and we're hoping that growth continues. So that's my hope for 2017.
Yes, congratulations.
A little bit self-serving. Thanks.
That's but you didn't cheer in the press box, so that's good, right?
Yes, no cheering in the press box. Oh my God, that Super Bowl in New York City, Broncos losing to Seattle Seahawks, and all the Seattle journalists cheering in the press box. It's unethical, I tell you. Anyway, it's time for the pot quiz, gentlemen. I hope you're ready.
Put on my thinking cap.
Oh my word. Lord. What is Jake Browne doing over here?
Listen, I can't get skunked again. I have the worst pot quiz record. Scott, you're in good hands with this one.
Oh boy. Okay.
Impressive. Did you bring your thinking cap?
You know what? I left it in the car, but I will make
right.
sure that I have it next time.
You're going to have to go with that. You'll be showing up in like July with a Santa hat. And we'll be like, why? Okay, Jake, we're starting with you. The rules are simple. If you get the answer wrong, you can steal it, Scott, and vice versa. So, Jake Browne, are you ready?
I guess.
Drum roll.
That was the correct readiness for you.
That is the sound you want to hear, too. That is the ding. Jake, the president of what South American country accepted the Nobel Peace Prize last week while encouraging other world leaders to rethink the war on drugs?
Oh gosh, why is it always questions about South America when I'm here?
Name the country, and we'll give you a bonus point if you can name the president.
I'm going to guess Chile, and I cannot guess the president.
That is not the right answer, but that does help.
Quiz!
Scott, you know it's not Chile.
Oh boy.
What South American country? This president just accepted the Peace Prize and said we should rethink the war on drugs.
Was it Uruguay?
It was not.
Okay.
All right, no points on the first question, but Scott, we're coming to you with the second question.
All right.
I don't want to know
The correct answer was Colombia. And Juan Manuel Santos was the president that won the Nobel Peace Prize.
Juan Manuel Santos. Yeah, Colombia. He won big award. He won the Peace Prize for kind of coming to some sort of an agreement between the government and a rebel group that was largely responsible for a lot of the drug trafficking within Colombia. Very cool story. Check him out. He's done important work down there, completely changing the game in South America and North America as well, since we've gotten so much of our substances from Colombia. So, Scott, the next question comes to you. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. The Republican governor of this U.S. territory is pushing to legalize recreational marijuana and, quote, tax the heck out of it, end quote. What U.S. territory is it?
Puerto Rico?
No. No ding. You don't hear that bell. You know there's a problem. Jake for the steal.
Can I get a Guam?
Oh, that is a ding. That is a correct answer.
I'll take it.
Jake will create his own dings if he needs to, apparently.
Well done. Yes, Guam.
I don't know any other U.S. territory.
I think that's the only other one, other than the U.S. Virgin Islands, maybe. You had an advantage because that was going to be my guess.
Have we taken over New
coin on
Brunswick
that
yet? Or?
You got lucky on that
Do
one.
you remember the other U.S. territory we had in the weekend weed like 3 months ago? Was it the?
American Samoa?
It was not
No,
American
wasn't
Samoa.
that
It wasn't
one.
the Virgin
It
Islands.
was the. I had it on the tip of my tongue and just lost it. Anyway, there's lots more American territories, but those are the two most famous. Congrats on the correct answer. We're
Colonialism
back
at
at you,
work.
Jake.
All right.
Here is the question a little bit closer to home. Recreational cannabis became legal in what U.S. state this week, Jake?
Maine?
Oh,
I am so happy that Jake
that
got
one
this
I
wrong,
know.
and I can't wait to talk about why.
Okay.
That one
Scott
I do
for the
know.
steal.
Where I went to college in good old Wellesley, Massachusetts,
Oh, the
you can
state.
now legally
Possess, use,
grow.
Reefa.
Yes.
There you go. Okay, so are we at 1-1?
I think so.
I think so.
Both on steals, I think.
Tie it.
Okay, so this last question
All right.
could determine the winner or could determine a tie, which is always fun.
All right.
Scott, we're coming at you. You get the first guest here. Recreational marijuana will soon be legal in what U.S. state after opponents recently dropped a request for a recount on the recent ballot initiative?
All right. Up in Maine.
Oh, Scott brought it. Scott brought the A
It was a
game.
good fight.
Hey,
I believe that means Jake has to relinquish his crown now.
Thinking cap.
The thinking cap didn't do much good, although it matched beautifully. I have to say,
I'm a slave to
this
fashion.
is a real matching. Looks like some Celtics, some old Celtics throwback.
Oh, you know it.
You know, Adidas.
Don't
Is
let anyone in Massachusetts know that I just lost.
I'm
them.
letting everybody in Massachusetts know.
Oh my God.
Sorry,
You guys-
I'm still reeling from the Patriots game.
hey, you guys won. It wasn't pretty, but
It wasn't pretty. It never is.
all right. Props to you guys. What a pleasure.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure, Jake and Scott.
Scott.
You will be back talking banking with us when we know more about what it's going to look
I
like.
can't
under this new
wait. I'm going to put it on my
administration.
calendar
For the
here.
annual Scott
Absolutely.
Jordan holiday show.
I want to thank my guests, Jake Browne and Scott Jordan, but most importantly, I want to thank you all for watching, listening, and telling your friends about the Cannabist Show. I'm Ricardo Baca, that's Vince, that's Don, that's Pat, the rest of the crew. Have a great day, everyone, and we will see you next week.
I'm allowed to lose, I choose to win, I'm all in, I'm calling any posse you'll be raising at the end, I'll say it again, ain't afraid to get in, I'll be going for the jackpot with aces in my hand, I'm raw.